The twin moons hung low over the black skies of Virelia, casting silver light on the star court, an ancient ruin no one dared to touch. It was said the throne at its center, the star throne, was not made by human hands, but by beings who had vanished before history began. Locals whispered that anyone foolish enough to sit on it would vanish too, body and soul, their screams echoing across the galaxy. For centuries no one had dared, until tonight. Kieran stood before it, the crowd gathered in a rough circle around him. Most were there to mock him, not cheer. He was not a warrior, not a scholar, not even a noble, just a cargo hauler's son, who had more stubborn pride than sense. "Sit on it, then," a tall man in a crimson cloak sneered, his voice dripping with amusement. "Show us how brave you are, or how stupid." Laughter rippled through the crowd, some already turning, away as if the outcome was obvious. Kieran could feel his heart pounding, his mind screaming for him to walk away, but something in the way they looked at him, the smirks, the rolled eyes, made him take a step forward, and then another. The closer he got, the more the air seemed to thicken. It was like walking into a storm no one else could feel. A faint hum vibrated through his bones, though the night was otherwise silent. He could see the throne clearly now, gleaming metal etched with symbols that shifted when he tried to focus on them. Its high back curved like the wings of some forgotten creature, and the seat glowed faintly as if lit from within. His instincts screamed that this was no mere relic. He swallowed hard. Somewhere in the crowd, a young girl's voice rang out, "Don't!" But it was drowned in laughter and jeers. He thought of turning away. He almost did. But then something strange happened. The hum grew louder, warmer, like it recognized him. He reached out, his fingers brushing the cold armrest, and a shiver shot up his spine. For a heartbeat, he saw flashes, stars swirling, planets burning, voices calling his name, though they were not human. The moment he sat down, everything changed. The throne's glow flared, searing bright, and the symbols blazed like molten gold. The crowd's laughter died instantly, replaced by gasps. The ground trembled under their feet. The air crackled, with an energy so strong it made the hair on their arms stand up. Somewhere high above, the sky split open in a jagged tear of light. The twin moons were swallowed in shadow. Kieran gripped the armrests as the hum became a roar in his skull, filling every corner of his mind. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe, yet he wasn't afraid anymore. In the split second before everything went black, he realized something chilling. The throne was not waking up because of chance. It was waking up because of him. And somewhere, deep inside its alien mind, it had been waiting for this moment for a very, very long time. The crowd stood frozen, too afraid to run, as the first beam of light shot from the throne into the sky, tearing through the darkness and calling to something far beyond Virelia. Something that was now coming. The light from the throne tore through. The sky like a spear, vanishing into the black beyond, yet leaving a strange afterglow that pulsed faintly above the ruins. Kieran's head jerked forward as the energy that had locked him in place abruptly released him. He gasped for breath, his vision swimming with shapes he couldn't name, creatures of shadow and flame, towers built from light, oceans that moved, like living things. He blinked hard, but the images clung to the edges of his mind like ghosts refusing to leave. Around him, no one moved. The crowd that had come to mock him now stared in absolute silence, their faces pale in the moonlight. The man in the crimson cloak took a slow step backward, as though the air itself had turned poisonous. The hum in the throne faded, but not completely. It lingered under his skin, a low vibration that seemed to pulse with his heartbeat. Then, without warning, the ground beneath the star court cracked, sending thin lines of blue light racing outward, like veins. The ancient stone trembled, dust drifting from the towering pillars around them. Somewhere deep below, something groaned, as if the ruins themselves were waking from a long sleep. "What did you do?" a woman whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. Kieran didn't answer, not because he didn't want to, but because he didn't know. His hands trembled as he stood, the glow of the throne dimming as though disappointed to see him leave. He had only taken one step away when a sharp sound cut through the night, a tone, high and metallic, echoing from the open sky. It was followed by another, lower this time, layered with a strange rhythm. The tones weren't random, they were signals. A murmur of fear rippled through the crowd, and some turned to flee, but the moment they stepped past the outer ring of stone, they froze. Not willingly, something invisible stopped them, a shimmering wall of light that curved around the ruins, like a dome. One man reached for it, and the instant his hand touched the surface, he vanished in a flash of white. The crowd erupted into shouts, panic setting in. People clawed at the barrier, others backing away toward the center, toward Kieran, as if he might somehow undo what had been done. But Kieran could feel it. This was only the beginning. The throne had called something from the stars, and now the ruins were sealed like a cage, not to keep them in, but to keep something else out. A sudden gust of icy wind swept through, carrying with it a faint, unearthly whisper. Kieran's heart skipped. The voice was not in the air. It was in his mind. "You have woken us. You will not be left alone." He staggered back, his knees almost giving way. Somewhere high above the pulsing glow, a shadow passed across the torn sky. It was vast, blocking the stars for several long seconds before sliding away into the darkness. The crowd didn't see it, but Kieran did. And deep down, he knew it had seen him too. The night had grown heavier, the air thick as if the very sky was pressing down on the ruins. Kieran's breath came shallow, his eyes darting between the silent throne and the shifting darkness above. The crowd had pulled away from him now, forming a jagged circle, their fear no longer hidden. Whispers swirled like smoke, some blaming him, others calling the throne cursed, but all of them glancing toward the sky where that massive shadow had passed. The dome of light still shimmered faintly at the edges, its surface rippling like water, trapping them in. From somewhere deep beyond the ruins came a low, rumbling sound, too steady to be thunder, too alive to be the wind. The sound rolled, closer, and the stone under their feet vibrated in time with it. Then, from the far side of the ruins, the darkness moved. At first, Kieran thought it was another shadow in the clouds, but it was coming toward them fast. Shapes with wings, their movements smooth, their size impossible to mistake. Dragons. The crowd screamed, some dropping to the ground, others running, aimlessly within the dome. But there was nowhere to go. The first of the creatures broke through the dim light, scales glistening with colors the human eye couldn't name, eyes like molten gold fixed on the center of the court, on him. Kieran's knees weakened, but he couldn't look away. The lead dragon lowered its head, steam curling from its nostrils, and when it spoke, the words didn't come from its mouth. They crashed directly into his mind. Master, the single. Words slammed through him like a hammer, burning in his chest. Gasps filled the air, and the people who had mocked him earlier now stared with open shock. One of them whispered, "It spoke to him." The other dragons landed one by one, their massive bodies shaking the ground, their wings folding like sails after a storm. The lead dragon stepped closer, lowering its head until one golden eye filled Kieran's vision. "You answered the call of the throne of stars," it said, each word heavy with an ancient weight. "The bond is made." Kieran tried to speak, but his voice was gone. All he could do was nod, though he didn't understand what any of this meant. The dragon's gaze flickered toward the barrier, then back to him. The hunt begins. You are not safe here. Before he could ask who or what was hunting them, the barrier trembled as something struck it from the outside. A shockwave tore through the court, sending people sprawling. Kieran turned toward the source and froze. Beyond the shimmering wall, dozens of tall, spindly figures were gathering, their limbs too long, their faces hidden in shadow. They moved like liquid, their glowing eyes fixed on the ruins. And when they spoke, their voices were a chorus of hunger. Give him to us. The air inside the dome felt thinner now, every breath a struggle as the strange, spindly figures outside pressed closer. Their shapes blurred at the edges like they didn't fully belong to this world. The barrier rippled violently each time they touched it, and with every strike, the glow around them pulsed brighter, as if feeding on the energy. Kieran stood frozen in the center of the court, the dragons forming a half-circle around him, their massive bodies shielding him from sight. But the lead dragon's voice cut through his fear, sharp and commanding in his mind. They are the Hollow Ones. They can smell the throne's awakening. If they break through, no one here will survive. The words sent a chill racing down his spine. Around them, the crowd's panic boiled over. Some pounded their fists on the inside of the dome, screaming at the barrier as if it might let them out. Others fell to their knees, muttering desperate prayers to gods who had abandoned this place long ago. The lead dragon's golden eye flicked toward him again. You have two choices. Command the throne and claim its power, or die here with the rest of them. Kieran's mouth felt dry, his voice barely more than a whisper. I don't even know what the throne is. The dragon's rumble was like distant thunder. You will. It turned toward the towering seat behind him, and for the first time since, it had come alive. The throne pulsed with a soft, steady light. The carvings in the stone shifted, forming shapes, maps of stars he had never seen, swirling like living constellations. He stepped closer, every movement slow, as if the air around it had grown heavier. His fingers brushed the armrest, and a jolt of heat shot through him, slamming visions into his mind, cities floating in the void, armies of light clashing with beasts of shadow, and above it all, a great war between those who ruled the galaxies, and those who wanted them erased. When the vision snapped away, he was on his knees gasping. The dragons hadn't moved. The Hollow Ones outside had stopped pounding the barrier. They stood perfectly still, their glowing eyes locked on him as though they knew what he had just seen. Then, in perfect unison, they raised their long, clawed hands and touched the dome again, only this time the barrier didn't ripple. It cracked. A single hairline fracture spread across the shimmering wall with the sound of glass under strain. The lead dragon roared, the force of it shaking the ruins, but Kieran knew the truth the moment he saw it. The barrier wasn't going to hold much longer, and when it fell, they wouldn't just be coming for the city. They would be coming for him. The crack in the barrier widened with a sound like ice breaking on a frozen lake, each splinter of light spreading outwards in jagged veins. The Hollow Ones didn't rush. They stood in eerie stillness, their eyes glowing like dying stars, as if they knew time was already on their side. Kieran's heart pounded in his ears. The crowd had gone beyond panic now. Some were trying to climb the jagged ruins at the dome's edge, others huddled together as though pressing into the stone might hide them from what was coming. The dragons shifted restlessly, their scales glinting faintly in the unnatural light. The lead dragon lowered its massive head to Kieran's level, its breath hot against his skin. The throne has chosen you. That means you can wield it, or you can be destroyed by it. There is no third path. Kieran glanced at the massive seat behind him, the strange constellation still swirling faintly on its surface. You're asking me to sit in it again? He said, his voice low, almost drowned out by the growing hum in the air. Not asking, the dragon corrected, telling. The hum became a deep vibration under his feet, like the world itself was groaning. The fracture in the barrier split into three, pieces of shimmering light flaking away and dissolving into the air. The hollow ones began to move forward now, slow but certain, each step leaving a faint scorch on the ground outside. Kieran's breath caught. What happens if they get in? The dragon's answer was a single terrible word: extinction. That was enough. He turned toward the throne, each step feeling heavier than the last, as if unseen hands were trying to pull him back. When he finally reached it, he didn't hesitate this time. He sat. The moment his body touched the cold stone, the carvings exploded into motion. Light flooded through the cracks, spilling across the ruined floor in patterns that twisted and shifted faster than his eyes could follow. His mind was flooded again, but this time he wasn't just seeing. He was there. He stood on the surface of a dead moon with twin suns burning overhead. Armies of strange armored beings knelt before him, their faces hidden, their voices chanting. A name he didn't know but somehow understood belonged to him. Then the vision changed. He was flying through black space, the stars themselves bending away from him, as if afraid. When the vision broke, he was gripping the throne's armrests, so hard his knuckles hurt. The hollow ones were only steps from the shattered barrier now. But he felt something different inside him, a warmth, a power, a strange certainty that hadn't been there before. The lead dragon's eyes glowed like molten gold. "Command them," it said. Kieran rose slowly, his hands still tingling with heat, and the throne's light poured over him like a second skin. The hollow ones paused at the edge of the final crack in the barrier. For the first time, they hesitated, and Kieran, barely aware of the words leaving his mouth, spoke in a voice that didn't sound like his own. "Step back, or burn." The hollow ones tilted their heads in perfect unison. Then, without a sound, they took one more step forward, and the barrier finally shattered. The sound of the barrier breaking was like 1,000 bells shattering. At once, a wave of ringing that tore through the air and rattled Kieran's bones. Light fragments dissolved into dust, and for the first time, the hollow ones stepped into the city. They moved with inhuman grace, their black, tattered shapes bending the air around them. Each step seemed to swallow the color from the ground. The crowd scattered in every direction, some screaming, others frozen in place as if their bodies no longer obeyed them. The dragons roared, their voices shaking loose stones from the broken walls, and fire lit the sky in great arcs. But even the flames did not make the hollow ones flinch. They slipped through the fire like shadows through water, untouched and unafraid. Kieran felt the heat building inside his chest again, stronger now, as though the throne's light had anchored itself into his blood. The lead dragon stood beside him, its eyes never leaving the advancing enemy. "You have one chance," it warned. "One breath to bend them to your will, or be swallowed by their night." Kieran stepped forward, the stone, beneath his boots glowing faintly under his feet, the light spreading in cracks that mirrored the throne's carvings. The hollow ones stopped only a few paces away, their heads tilting as if studying him. One of them moved forward, taller than the rest, its body made of shifting darkness, and in its hands a blade that looked like frozen lightning. It raised, the weapon. The air around it growing colder, sharp enough to cut his skin without touching him. And then it spoke. Its voice was not one, but many, 1,000 whispers layered together. "You are not ready." The words struck him harder than the cold. He didn't know how, but he understood them. They were not here just to destroy. They were here to test. The lead dragon's voice thundered in his mind. "Prove them wrong." Kieran closed his eyes for a single heartbeat, then let the heat inside him flood outward. Light burst from his hands in a blinding wave, spiraling upward like twin storms, and the carvings on the ground lit up brighter than the sun. The Hollow One staggered for the first time, their forms flickering. But the tall one stepped through the light as if wading through shallow water, its blade humming with terrible power. It raised the weapon high, and Kieran knew this was it. One strike, and it would all end. The dragon lunged, intercepting the blade with a roar that split the sky. Sparks like falling stars rained around them. Kieran stood frozen for a moment. Too long. And in that moment he saw something in the tall, Hollow One's eyes, a reflection of himself, sitting on the throne, but wearing their darkness like armor.